Hello, heroic tubers, and welcome back to Let's Play Pools of Darkness with me, BlueAnkylo. This is our first episode of the proper series. In the playlist, you may have noticed an introduction video before this that covered some of the bits and bots of getting started on this kind of game. For today's episode, we'll go over our crew a little bit, we'll talk a little bit about the story, and then we'll get started on the main game. I don't expect to get too far because I want to go over like spell memorization and a few little things like that before we really dig into the meaty quests and all that. There's lots of quests to do. Okay, so take a look at your friendly party here. So we've got, I think you can use the mouse for some of this. So far advanced on these old games. We've got Shinga Glima, who is our paladin. Let me just pop over to just a second. Some of these people have left a couple comments on the last video, and I was going to read a little bit of that for you. So Shinga has been planning to continue to protect the party on our further adventure. He's been studying the Holy Scriptures to improve his power, and his armor's been repaired since the last battles, sword sharpened, you know the drill. Like a paladin, doing, you know, what paladins do, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a paladin, I'm a mage, don't ask me. But apparently he's been waiting for the call to arms. So anyway, stats are all pretty solid. I mean, you know, for a paladin, primarily you want lots of strength. Did I forget? I feel like he used to have better wisdom at some point. It's probably not a problem, but I could upgrade that back to 18 if I need to. The main thing is his powerful in melee. Anyway, so we've tried to transfer over some of his weapons and gear from Secret of the Silver Blades, and you know, this is the main stuff. He's got his amazing sword, plate mail, and shield, so that's great. Also, you know, because it's so quiet in the background, I'm going to talk about one before I go through the rest of the party. There's one little thing I want to do in the background here. I'm going to be playing some music from an OC remix album to basically fill in the blank spots when the game is really quiet, which is something that happens a lot in these old DOSBox games. And I will have to the side there the name of the album on top and the song that's playing on the bottom. So feel free to check those out if you're interested in. OC Remix is pretty awesome. We'll go with Final Fantasy VI to start because I don't know, it's a good game. And kind of fantasy setting, at least, not too far off. Okay, so that was Shinga. Next up is Fella McGubbins, is still in the party. He's our Cleric Ranger. And I'll have a quick look at what he has written for his character. Nothing too exciting. Deep contemplation about women, wine, and more wine. Sacramental wine from the forest, of course. So yeah, you know, that's what Rangers do, I'm sure, clearly. Just hang out in the forest drinking wine and thinking about girls. So that's cool. His stats are a little bit more preset, I guess. You know, it's not a big deal. But Rangers... Actually, I'm not sure. Rangers get a couple of Mage Spells, so they might need Intelligence a little bit. Normally, Cleric covers Wisdom and then general combat stats, obviously. Like, I'm not going to go super in-depth. Go watch Pool of Radiance, the beginning, if you want the in-depth how first edition Dungeons and Dragons work. Low armor class is good. Negatives, the higher the negatives, the better. Low THAC0 is good, and damage uses, you know, a dice system. 1d8, 1 to 8 roll. You know, I'm sure you guys can figure it out by now. So again, his gear is also pretty much top of the line, honestly. You can't get much better than that, other than some magical gear that has, like, boots of striding or something. Poor fella doesn't have his magic boots anymore. So that's our Cleric Ranger. Next up is Pixel, our Fighter Mage. So, a lot of the times, we tried to have Pixel use his magic not to be like a nuker to just cast fireballs, but to use his magic to support his fighting ability. So he'd be like casting Blink and Haste and you know, other support spells rather than purely nuking. But you know, as usual, magic users always want more fireballs. But you know, I try to balance him out that way a little bit. So again, pretty good stats all around. I did manage to give him a Cloak of Displacement, and he's got a Scimitar, which is different than a longsword. Banded Mail is it's a slightly more, you get +3 movement over plate mail for well, +1 armor class, one worse armor class. And a scimitar, I believe, does a little bit less damage than a longsword. Well, it says 1d8, but I'm pretty sure a longsword does a little bit extra damage to large-size enemies, and a scimitar does not. So they're close, very, very close, but not quite the same. Oh yes, and then Pixel's story. I go pick it up quick. So Pixel, let's see here. It's been a while since he arrived in this strange world, and he's apparently he was formerly quite scrawny, and he's been bulking up in this harsh environment. With his new friends, he's learning how to fit in, and he's starting to learn about this strange magical world. He's starting to forget about his previous life in, quote, the real world. So that's his... I don't want to like ruin it all. I'm sure he can leave some comments with further stories of the real world. Anyway, that's our fighter mage. Good deal. Next up is Christiana. She's our jack of all trades, cleric fighter mage, which has always been one of my favorite classes in first edition Dungeons and Dragons. Not excellent at any one thing, but can do cast all kinds of different types of spells and still fight pretty well. So that's fun. Similar type weapons. She went with a flail rather than a sword, so she can punish her foes. I seem to remember her talking a lot about wanting to have some sort of torture chamber dungeon once she retired, so I have a feeling she's got some affinity with these sorts of weapons. Just to double check this background description. Let's see. She was quite drained after all the mines in the last big adventure, so after many, many days in the terrible mines, she headed to the beaches of Hillsfar to work on her tan. She developed a bit of a drinking problem. The heroes have a bit of a reputation at this point for saving the day, and quite a few people are willing to buy us drinks, so unfortunately she developed a bit of a drinking problem. Luckily, though, her old friend Fella convinced her to head back to Phlan, which is where we will start our adventure. So it's good, and apparently Christiana enjoys the adventure even more than tanning, so that'll be nice to see. Anyway, that's her. Next up is a new face on the team. Roderick Prosop has taken this place of Sarius. So this is our new, our replacement thief-type character. We needed to have at least one thief, obviously. And for now, we're going with the multi-class fighter mage thief because, well, realistically, a thief doesn't get amazing strength. You can't get the 18-100 style strength, so you lose a lot of bonus damage. And the main use for a thief is to pull off amazing backstabs, which do quite a lot of damage. Like they got like I don't know if it's a damage multiplier in this game or just bonus d6s. I forget how they did it. But it's nice to have a higher base damage, so Fighter Thief gives you more damage that you can then multiply possibly. And then Mage, of course. So similar to Pixel, a lot of the plan for this character was to use like illusionary magic, like teleporting and concealment type spells to buff the fighting thief type abilities. Oftentimes we just end up using fireballs, but that's just the nature of first edition. So that's the idea, and now it's Roderick Prosop, and we'll talk a little bit more about some customizations you guys can do once we get into the game. Those little character models on the top, we can change those around a little bit if you guys would like. Those of you who have been blessed with characters. So, pretty good gear. Thieves can only do thief actions when they're wearing leather. I think it's up to studded leather armor. So generally their best protection is often from bracers, which are lighter even than leather. So we've got really good bracers here. I think this is equivalent to studded plus 4. I think studded leather is a base of 7, and then plus 4 brings it to 3, I think. So there is armor that's better than Bracer's AC 3. It's just rare and difficult to get. There's also Elven Chain in this game, which has an even better armor class, and thieves can still use it to steal. So if we find any of that, then we'll be laughing. So anyway, that's Rodica. Pretty good deal. I think one important thing to note, and I think we tested this out before, I gotta remember, is although it's a fighter thief, as a fighter you can equip like basically every weapon in the game, I think. I think you only get the chance to do the thief's backstab with a weapon that a thief could equip. Now, thieves happen to be able to equip longswords, which are the most common and generally strongest weapons. But if you equip something like a spear, perhaps, which is maybe not equipable by a thief, you would lose their backstab ability. I'm 90% sure we tested that last time. So that's those couple little thief things. And when I say backstab, that includes thief skill checks. So sometimes you'll be detecting traps or disarming traps. And if you... Well, I don't know if the weapon would break your thief skill, but your armor would definitely break the ability to do your thief stuff. So that's Rodica. Good stuff, good stuff. And then last but not least... Oh wait, Rodica, I forgot. Story, don't let me forget. So Rodica, as the newcomer... has been speaking of some tales that are suspiciously similar to what Pixel was telling us, actually. Strange tales about the real world and, aliens? I don't know what she's talking about. Certainly nothing we've seen in, the realms of, the Forgotten Realms. Other things of note for Rodica... She doesn't have a lot of memory of her past life, although she knows something's changed. She does apparently quite hate snakes and really likes towels. So her backstory may have been explained better in a different media form somewhere. She also can't see with without her glasses, and particularly enjoys ranged combat. So we will be trying, when possible, to allow her to use the bow. But as I'm sure those of you familiar with the series are, it's difficult to have a primary bow weapon. They tend not to keep up in damage very well. In fact, we can demonstrate this here quick. So with the longsword +4, which is pretty good, and reasonably good strength and fighter levels, Thaco of 3, 1 to 8 plus 10 damage. Well, let's quickly switch over to the bow. Now, I think composite bows add your strength bonus. You can't wear a shield, of course not, Blue. But maybe they don't add your strength bonus. So in this situation, we've lost like 6 points of damage. The good news is longbows get 2 attacks per round. Hopefully I'm not wrong on that. So you can shoot 2 arrows at a time. And I think the +2 from your bow only accounts to your Thaco. The +2 increases your chance to hit, but not your damage. And that it only takes damage from the arrows. The arrows bonus applies to your Thaco for chance to hit and your damage roll. The point is, it's difficult to do much. Like, if we're going to be fighting enemies with like 100 HP or 200 HP, doing, minimum 5 to 11 damage, maybe ×2, is not... It doesn't keep up with melee very well, is all I'm trying to say. But we'll try. Anyway, I'll give that a go. Okay, done. And finally, last but definitely not least, BlueAnkylo himself, the chaotic good, Cleric Mage. And he's got his mighty mace. Given that I've lost a lot of magical items, I've lost some spell charges. What I've been doing in between games, well, for one, I learned that as heroes of much renown, drinks were on many an inn patron. So I may not have developed a drinking problem, but I have spent a lot of time wasting time, of course. And in my spare time, when I wasn't enjoying the company, let's say, I was learning how to merge magical items into your everyday garments. So the reason why some of our magical items have disappeared is probably because I broke them experimenting on how to merge them with your casual outfits that are now part of your basic stats. Anyway, so that'll cover that. As the Cleric Mage, I try to be the primary nuker for all the fireballs and ice storms and everything. I would be better at that as a pure mage, but I like the ability to equip armor and better weapons with the Cleric Mage, although it does cost me a couple mage levels overall. I think this is a reasonably survivable character, Having fighter is always nice for good Thaco and strength and all that. But the mages get the best spells late game. So that's kind of how that works. Okay. You know, we're already like 15 minutes in and all I've done is the character introduction. Let's begin adventuring. Don't have to worry about these sorts of things if you're using the GOG version. It's all pre-covered. You don't have to deal with it. So welcome, heroes! We have prospered since Tyrannthraxis was defeated by your kind 10 years ago. Oh, that reminds me of something. Sorry, we have to do one more thing. I am Rolf, portmaster of this fine city. I guess we'll let him give us a tour in just a second. One other thing I was going to show you guys, and we're going to try to switch to this every now and then, is this is in our adventurer's journal. Let's introduce the game. This is the Moonsea area. This is where Christiana took her little vacation, and we may have had some adventures down here in the past. I don't know. Well, the first game was Phlan, and the area around Phlan, sort of northwest Moonsea. We did a fair bit of stuff. The second game was like southwest Moonsea. I'm not 100% sure where Secret of the Silver Blaze occurred. We got teleported somewhere far away. And then the fourth game, apparently even a larger map. That's fine. So for 10 years, your glorious band has fought evil wherever it has threatened the realms. Lord Bane has suffered many defeats at your hands, and now peace washes over the lands. Now your path comes full circle, back to the thriving city of Phlan. As your ship arrives, you see the towers of Phlan. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Right. Sometimes the music is a little bit louder. Sometimes it's a little bit quieter. As your ship arrives, you see the towers of Phlan, where before only ruins stood. The slums and decay have given way to new growth. Boats bob in the harbor under the watchful protection of Sokol Keep. In large measure, this prosperity and success was born of your defeat of Tyrannthraxis so many years ago. As the sails are furled and the crew prepare to dock, you wonder, where could adventure be found amongst such peace? And that's how we begin our adventure. So, we arrived at the docks, and we met Rolf. And I should probably switch back to the view that shows us that. Alright, let's take a tour. Now, the map won't show up until I can save and then load the map in properly, but we'll talk about that in just a second. You'll just have to pretend we're playing the original game with no auto map for a second. This is how you used to have to navigate. We have left the passenger dock. Due south are the new council chambers. I'm certain the council will be most happy to see you. To the east is a small cloister of Tyr. Archbishop Braccio is completing a cathedral across the river. It once belonged to the priests of Bane, but it was liberated 10 years ago. So there should be a lot of familiarities, or similarities perhaps. We might be familiar, and we might notice the similarities between the first game and this. If you've memorized grid-based city maps. This is the new training hall. From my experience, I expect you will make good use of it. The training master here 10 years ago was here 10 years ago, so I doubt he would charge your heroes anything. Let's continue the tour. It's nice to know we can get trained for free. Goldbox Companion, the accessory software, lets you train for free as well. So either way, we're not paying gold anymore, which is nice. This temple is dedicated to Suna. Sune? I forget. The priestesses will gladly tend to your wounds. However, Phlan has become quiet. I cannot foresee anything that would threaten you. I never really enjoyed going to the temples to heal. Too much trouble. Here you can see one of our decorative fountains. The city has become much more pleasant since it was freed. Through here is the city park. Further west, in the old slums, are most of the stores and residences. I must leave you now. Please pay your respects to the council. Their chambers are now due east. Good day. Alright, I won't always read the text out loud, but I figured for today's episode, you know, introduce you guys properly to the game. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is encamp and save, not quit. But this way I can now use Goldbox Companion here, just in a second, to basically recognize that save file. The problem is at the beginning, you don't have a map location, so Goldbox Companion can't lock into your game. Now that we've got a map location saved, not like a new game with no map location, we can actually start using the auto map and all that. So Goldbox Companion I explained a little bit in the introduction video, a fair bit. We'll be using it to do an auto map, which you can see on the left side of your screen, which is pretty helpful. And normally in-game, of course, you'd only get this, which is, well, you could use it to help sometimes, but it's not nearly as useful as the proper auto map that we will have. So anyway, that's that. So let's see, we should probably explore the town. What else was I going to talk about? We're going to do some spell memorization, which might be the last thing we do for this episode when we get to an inn. Because there's actually quite a lot to talk about, and I'd like to cover that in this episode before we get to the meat of the game. Alright, so this is the Traitors Gate. You might remember this from the first game. Oh, a journal entry already. Why is... Huh. If, I'm gonna have to double check this. Note to self, check this point in the audio, because my mic, flashed red when I was talking there, which is odd. It usually doesn't do that. I'll have to check that. If something sounded weird, you guys let me know in the comments, because I probably forgot to check it. So, journal entry 57. Okay, now there's two ways to do this. Normally, you'd switch to your Adventurer's Journal, the book in your hands as you play. Scroll down to 57. That's what he said, right? Yeah, 57. And read the, come on, anytime, scroll. My PDF viewer just crashed? What's going on? Why would that crash? Apparently, I'm having some issues here today. Okay. Alright. Good try. Okay, we're back. I don't know what's going on. Things are getting strange, everyone. Yeah, my CPU spiked to 100% in this almost weird, very professional introduction episode. So, 57, journal entry about Traitors Gate. That's what I was trying to talk about. Or, if you've got Goldbox Companion installed, which I do, there's a handy-dandy little feature here in Journals, 51 to 60, 57. And this, oh, it doesn't show it on your screen. Ah, shucks. I'll have to... Dang. For me, it's popped up right on top of the main game window, which is pretty cool. But for you guys, it wasn't there. So, sorry about that. We'll just go with the Adventurer's Journal. Okay, so Traitors Gate. I'll see if I can figure that out later on. I can find a way to have that pop up when I read it in-game, because that's more convenient. You might wonder at this gate's odd name. Many do. It was named after the last of the Cadornus Porphyris. Oh, there's some names. Cadornus. Porphyrs? Porphy. The Cadornus owned the great textile house, which made them a very wealthy and influential family. Porky advanced to rule the council, and many respected and trusted him. People had forgotten that he was cursed as a child, possessed by the spirit of fire. In manhood, he made pacts with the Zentarim and other evils, if you can believe it, wanting even more power. But a party of heroes put an end to this menace. They were quite like yourselves. Perhaps you know them, they just looked a little younger. Sure, nobody played the original game. Alright, well, let's hope we don't get any other weird slowdowns here. Okay. So, we don't need to go through the Traitors Gate yet. Let me just fill in some map. So we can go to the Temple of Sune, why not? Let's learn about the ministrations of Sune. So, why... Something is wrong with my PDF viewer. It keeps... I'm just gonna close it. No more PDFs. We're not allowed to look at the manual for a while. It just keeps popping up new tabs on my browser. It's like something's wrong. Anyway, sorry. So at a temple, you can cast high-level cleric spells on your characters. It costs gold. In the older games, this was the only way to, say, raise dead, neutralize poison, restore. This is actually a mage spell, which is strange, but this was the only way to cure some of these things at a low level. As we get to be high level, we can do this ourselves, as long as our cleric's not dead. So that's that. I guess they can repair... What did that do? Well, that was weird. Did we have hidden level drain? We shouldn't have. I remade all the characters. I wonder if repair switches you to max HP. It's definitely tweaked our HP quite a lot. But I'm pretty sure I had done the math earlier, and I was sure that Shinga was at the correct number, and now he's dropped in HP. Shinga lost some, most other people gained some. I lost a little bit. That was really weird. I've never used that command before. I'll have to check that out. Weird. I assume the game is trying to calculate the correct maximum HP, but I don't believe that's right. It might not be taking into effect his 19 Constitution or something, because you get a bonus HP for the first 11 levels like that. 10 or 11 levels. Alright, well that was different. So, I'm just gonna reload, actually, because that's not fair. We don't want to, like, lose HP. This has been a really interesting first episode. Good stuff, everybody. Be right back. This is actually quite interesting to me. Hush you. Can't really skip through these very quickly. Alright. Load, pools, B. Is that... That's not the right one, is it? Dang it. Well, let's just skip this. Let's show you what happens if you don't get the tour. Not like we've lost much progress, but... I mean, you see what the HP is like, right? We don't want to lose that. Alright, so, a little bit off key here. What's going on? Okay. Load up Gold Box Companion. Okay, I have to... Gee whiz, this has been a mess of a first episode. End camp. Save A again. Don't quit. And I don't like the singing music, so that's going to distract me even more. Alright. Gold Box Companion is back. Alright. One side effect of Gold Box Companion is it sort of remembers your mapping. I mean, if you're worried about that sort of thing, when you reload a game, it's... I mean, you got bigger things to worry about. Alright, so we were, supposed to be mapping out this first area and learning where we were going to go. And then, of course, I went to the temple and ruined everything. So there's the docks. Cloister of... I don't know if I dare go anywhere with these temples. And cursed by Sune, or whoever that was. A place of meditation. No healing. So, just meditate and get out. Alright. Good times. Welcome to Tier, everybody. I told Shinga that we'd go to all the temples for him before we left town, so we got to at least stop by. But that first one was not quite what I was hoping for. So Town Hall, we'll save that for a little bit later, because there's going to be some story there. Alright, Training Hall we knew about. So we've sort of mapped out the first area. All you do in the Training Hall is, like, level up, basically. One thing you guys can see underneath the character's name at the top of the screen, there's a little bar. That's your experience bar, and it will fill up when they're ready to level up. So that's cool. Human change class is that dual class thing I talked about, and it's basically all the same options you have at the load screen at the beginning of the game. Okay. Let's get back in with it. What's going on here? The shops are in the park. We'll go there in a minute. Let's finish checking out this side of town, though, first. Okay, so that leads into the park. We'll go there shortly. Temple of Tempest. So, we can get all of these healing spells again here. Good stuff. I'm not going to collect Repair ever again, now that I know that it messes with your HP and who knows what else. Parkside Gate. Alright, nothing exciting. Temple of Gond. Invoke the powers of Gond, Wondermaker, of course. So, same thing, you know. Every priest has his own little spiel, but same thing, basically. Sunrise Inn, well, that's what we need. Free accommodations, so you can in-camp here and rest. for no cost and no one gets mad at you is the main thing. Only in, like, the first game did they really bug you about paying for inns, I think. And even then, the price was so low, it wasn't that big a deal. And by the way, we do have quite a lot of money. We lost a lot after the last adventure, but we still have enough. So the center building is all town hall. And I kind of want to save this for last. Just filling in the map a little bit. You know how it is. Oh, every now and then you get like a random event that interrupts you. Alright, so that's the first section of town. That's half of the map, basically. Let's go through the park gate. Lush and green. The trees are little, but it's a nice park nonetheless. Alright, and welcome to West Phlan. Oh, you're not supposed to know about that. That's the map from, that's when I was testing. Unexplored. We haven't been here yet. Forget about that. Alright. So outside of the park, so Valhagen Park is just that sort of connecting area there. You could go through Traitors Gate, though. And all the guards love to tell us that story, clearly. And I guess these are just residences if there's no sign. So we don't really need to intrude on them. What kind of heroes would we be if we didn't share their meager meals? Just a quaint shop. Nice little touches. The town's filled up with people. But I expect most of the messages will be the same. Yeah, we'll probably get the same 2 messages for all these. That's fine. It's a town of clones, apparently. Alright, just residences. Okay, you know what? I'm pretty much done with residences. It's fine. A woman guarded by a military escort steps forward at your approach. I am Council Member Sasha. I'm heading to the lands of Thar. No. We are not going to Thar. We have to go to the council chambers first. And we have to go shopping. Very important. Somewhere around here, we'll find some shops. So, she doesn't look like much of a blacksmith to me, but I'll take what I can get. So, none of this is going to be magical. Well, there's Elven Chain, which is surprisingly cheap, honestly. In a lot of games, this base price is really expensive. If we could get Elven Chain plus, like, 2, it'd probably be a good choice for Erotica. But otherwise, everyone else has far better equipment. You can use View to check out your stuff. At the shop, you can ID it if it's unidentified, and you pay 100 gold, I believe, to get it identified. You can also sell items, of course, which is always a good idea. If you pool is for everyone's money gets pooled together, and then an option to share the money back out will appear. And Appraise is for changing gems and jewelry into coins you can spend. And I gave everybody, if you didn't notice, I gave everyone 20 jewelry to account for the lost gold, platinum, and gems and stuff between games, because we had hundreds and hundreds and probably thousands of jewelry at the end of the last game. So I role-played that everyone got to keep 20 after 10 years. Most people spent it all and lost it. Squirrels stole it from Bella. Shinga probably donated it to the church. Christiana clearly drank it all away. Rodica, I don't know. I don't know how she got it. She probably just found Sirius and... well, he must have had a corpse somewhere and just grabbed his loot on the way in or something. I don't know. You guys can figure it out. But yeah, anyway, everyone's got a little bit of money. And we can turn the jewelry back into money. I didn't want to give us a ton of gold, but enough to cover the basic expenses was my logic. So we're not going back to the park. This is just more villages. It's a pleasant peasant house. Fine clothing. Doesn't look that fine to me. Just basic. I mean, I don't think there's any way to enchant these. So unless we run into a quest that requires, like, basic clothing, I don't know why you'd ever use this shop. So that's interesting. That's not very interesting, let's say. What else do we got down here? Greetings. Oh, a journal entry. Oh, but my PDF viewer apparently was giving me trouble. Well, let's, okay, you know what? I'm just going to read it in-game with Goldbox Companion because that's going to cause less issues. You just won't be able to see it yourself. Journal entry number 9. I'm really good at this game. Journal entry. Don't ever scroll the mouse too low here or the menu disappears. So, Troll Toss Tavern. Ways back, a group of trolls and ogres used this building to toss sacks of grain around. If a body happened by, they'd toss them about as well. Thems came to be killed, of course, by heroes such as yourself. But we hire on some ettins to keep the tradition going. It's a lively sport. Though a mite dangerous. Okay, that's interesting. What could happen? A terrible tavern brawl? Do you guys remember in Pools of Radiance? Have you guys been watching that long from Pool of Radiance when we got into a terrible tavern brawl and we all died on episode 1? That was fun. So anyway, this is good. We get an opportunity to do a little bit of combat here. So you can use aim and move to kind of look around. These ettins are not going to be very difficult, I can tell you already. I'm not even going to look them up in the manual for reasons. Like, I can't use the manual. But, no, they're not very strong. The only downside is I haven't actually memorized new spells yet, so we're running on pure melee and weapons and bows and stuff. But, if you move into an enemy, you attack it. I'm not going to go into melee myself, but if I switch over to my staff sling, which they gave me a new staff sling when you start this game, I'll be able to throw some rocks at them. You know, classic Ankylo missing with all of his rocks. And then Rodica, okay, you know what, just for this time specifically, we're going with the bow. Might not last for too long, but we'll give it a shot. We'll give it a shot. So I'm going to move her kind of out of the way so that it's less likely that one of the ettins gets into melee with her. Hopefully we can sort of keep her out of melee, because then the bow doesn't work. And, yeah, actually, they're so tall, they could technically force their way past Christiana, but if you move while you're adjacent to a melee fighter, they get a free attack of opportunity. So no enemy would want to stand here and move up, because Christiana would smack them, because she's got fighter. And I think that only counts with fighters, but I'm not 100% sure. Alright. Now, it looks like Fella doesn't have his bow. Somehow it's disappeared here. Maybe the black-colored bow doesn't show up very well? I don't know. Might have to change his weapons around a little bit. Wow, 26 damage, eh? Now, the ettins are probably considered evil, which is one of the perks that Shinga will have. He'll have protection from evil on by default. So usually I'll just use the move command to walk into enemies and get our attacks. So some characters will have 2 attacks per round by default right now. Some characters are only going to get a second attack every second round. Wow, 40 damage. Okay, you know what that is? Rangers do double damage to large, giant-type monsters. One of the exceptional ranger perks. There we go. Yeah, so as expected, the monsters aren't putting up a whole lot of a fight. It's a good introduction battle, I think. Oh, they're surrendering because their morale. All enemies have some sort of morale value, and as their friends die, they'll eventually just give up, which is annoying because then they don't get you don't get experience. Also, that ettin was on guard mode, which means they got their attacks as soon as someone moves into melee. We'll see that now and then. Hey, I killed something! Nice. Well, we actually got a bit of experience. At our levels, that's not very much, but 4,000 split 6 ways, you know. So, what do we find? Take 12 gems. So we just share them, no big deal. Done. Congratulations! So, you know, that was fun. I'm glad we went down there. We visited the Troll Toss Tavern. Well, let's try the Bowyer's supply. What have you got, my friend? So these are not... We've got arrows +2 equipped right now. These are just plain arrows, but at least we can restock if we have to. Mages can equip bows, so you're either using a sling or darts. And I think fighters are the only ones that can use javelins. And then bolts are for crossbows, which are generally worse than longbows. Longbows get 2 attacks per round. I think crossbows just get the 1. So that's all there is to do. I will be surprised if we find any equipment stores that are better than what we've got already. That would be very unlikely. Olo's Mystic Devices. Well, this might be the one. Magic items is what we need for sure. Well, it depends on what's on these scrolls, but I'll give you a hint. Everyone in 10 years has filled their spell book as though they've learned all the spells up to their current level. So, nobody is missing the Fireball spell that you could potentially learn from this scroll, for instance. We've learned them all, it's been long enough. Wand of Magic Missiles is kind of cool, pretty expensive, honestly. And, I guess technically a Ring of Protection might be an upgrade for someone, but what often happens, and I always forget the exact mechanics, but what am I trying to say? If you have like armor +1 and a ring +1, you don't get +2. It just takes the highest enchantment bonus. But not in all cases, so it's weird. Sometimes it works, like the cloak might work with your armor, but not the ring. And I never remember exactly how the rules for that work. But suffice to say, we're probably not going to buy those, because it's no big deal. But just for interest's sake, you know. Just breaking into some houses. Old Guild Armory. Alright, lots of normal unenchanted weapons. This looks like the same shop that was here in the original game, actually. It's kind of interesting. Alright. None of that is going to be very valuable for high-level heroes. Lakeside Inn. Okay, we're going to do that in a second if there's nothing else. Well, I'm going to go not to the Spendthrift Inn, but to the Lakeside Inn. Common room is free. Okay, cool. So, all I really want to do for today's episode left, it's already been fairly long, is I want to spend the next 10 minutes, or however long it is, going over... Did that red microphone thing again. Weird. Very weird technical difficulties for today. I don't know what's causing them. I guess this game's kind of awkward to record. Anyway, I want to go over some spells with you guys. So for the rest of this episode, we're going to start covering what kind of spells are worth memorizing. Because just because we've learned a lot of spells doesn't mean you can memorize all of them to cast in one go. So Shinga's is probably the easiest because he's only got up to level 4 cleric spells. We're not going to worry about his just yet. So I'm going to start with Pixel for a reason, because he's only got mage spells, and pretty high level mage spells. So, oh boy, are there a lot of spells here. Like I said, he's just learned them all. Even though at the end of the last game he probably only had like 2 of these, or 3 or something. I just filled in the blanks. If you can only memorize one of them, knowing them all doesn't really gain you any advantage, so it's not a big deal. I don't feel like. Alright, so what we're gonna do to cover some of these spells, so like Pixel can learn all the mage spells, and Bella could learn basically all the cleric spells, although first and second level will be including some druid and mage spells, but normally he's getting like cleric stuff. These are kind of like the cleric type. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna dare to open my PDF viewer again, just a second, because I have to show these off. This is the only way you know what any of the spells do in a gold box game. Alright, so not here, but Well, there's some charts, you know, fun. Everyone loves spreadsheets, right? But, no, there's pretty good spell descriptions here. And all I want to do is go over kind of the logic behind my spell selection. And then I will be doing the micromanagement sort of busy work of what spells who memorizes off camera. Because it takes a lot of time choosing which spells you memorize and reload on. So I'll just try to go through some of these, some of the notable ones here quickly. Bless is always useful. One bonus Thaco is not a huge difference late game. It's a 1 in 20 chance better to hit for your party, which is nice, but it's not a huge difference. Curse you can only cast in combat, and it's a 1 in 20 worse chance to hit for the enemy. So again, they're small bonuses. It's like a 5% effect, but it's okay. Cause light wounds is pretty terrible. Cure light wounds is your cheap healing spell, but when we're talking about 100 HP and we're taking 50 damage or 40 damage from spells, it doesn't really do much. Detect magic you have to use pretty regularly, usually to find out if items are magical, but sometimes it has like story effects as well if you've got it cast. I believe if I have a gold box companion option enabled while detect magic is running, it will auto-identify, which is something we're going to test out. Protection from evil, seeing as we're often fighting evil enemies, is going to often help. All saving throws and AC +2 or -2. Saving throws can be very important for not dying to instant death attacks like, say, Disintegrate or Level Drain. So if an evil spellcaster is trying to kill you, protection from evil can be very useful for avoiding the spell effect. And the AC, that's like a 10% chance to dodge, basically. So that's cool. We don't fight good enemies very often, so that's pretty poor. And Resist Cold is good if you're fighting ice dragons, like white dragons, or spellcasters that use Ice Storm or Cone of Cold. But usually this is not going to help because you don't know what spells or enemies you're going to fight, so unless you know for sure, cold protection doesn't do much. Find Traps doesn't matter too much because we've got a Thief. Oh, so of the first level Cleric spells, I will often get a couple Detects, a couple Cure Lights, a Bless or 2, and a Protection from Evil. Although, this is a single target, there's an AoE version of that that's better. Second level Cleric, not worth it. Hold Person is really good against straight up humans, dwarves, etc. If you've been held, a melee attack will kill them instantly. The chances of this applying are pretty good, so a second level spell that has a good chance to insta-kill something, basically, or nearly insta-kill, is very strong. In fact, you don't even need to use a melee attack to finish them off. A ranged, like, rock, like a sling or a bow, will also kill them in one hit. Resist Fire is the same thing as Resist Cold, except fire comes up more often, so Fireballs and Flame Strike and Meteor Shower, I think. There's actually quite a lot of fire damage, so that's nice. Silence, 15-foot radius, I don't get to work very often, but you cast it on a target, and anything adjacent can't cast spells. It has some good uses against enemy spellcasters, but often they will resist the spell effect because they've got good saving throws. You're better off trying to do a little bit of damage to them, because if they've taken damage, they can't cast spells for the round. It's not as long-term as the spell, but you can almost guarantee deal damage, whereas getting the spell to apply is difficult. Slow Poison, worthless at this level. Snake Charm is basically worthless, unless you're Rodica, maybe. It only works on snakes. How often do we fight snakes? Not very often. Spiritual Hammer is kind of a gimmick. It's a lousy hammer that you're not going to use at high level. So level 2 spells, you probably want Hold Person, Resist Fire maybe, Silence maybe. That's probably all the ones you want. Third level spells have some good stuff. Bestow Curse is not something I would usually do, but if you're fighting an enemy like a boss that's really strong, that's hard to hit, that's hitting you, this will reduce their chance to hit and their chance to resist spells. But you have to have this apply first. So if you can't get a spell effect to work on them, you're probably not going to get Curse to work on them. But it's a low-ish level spell, so it might be worth trying. Blindness I almost never use, other than curing it, but causing it seems pointless. Causing blindness disease, pointless. Curing it is useful when it comes up. Dispel Magic can be good. So if you've been diseased, this won't cure it. This cures other things like hold person, which is really bad, so having Dispel Magic is really good. Prayer is your standard pretty awesome level 3 cleric spell. It's kind of like Bless, except instead of just Thaco, right? Just Thaco. It also gives you saving throws. And affects monsters as well. That's pretty awesome, honestly. So that's a net gain of 1 accuracy, 5% accuracy, 5% saving throws, and then negative 5% for the enemy, negative 5% saving throws for the enemy. Pretty cool. I don't think the enemy can save to avoid this effect. They just are... If they're within range of the prayer, they're affected by it, I believe. And remove curse is fine. Same as, like, remove disease. It's nice to have a couple of all the remove spells. Level 4, Cleric Magic. We're starting to get to some better healing spells. It's still not great, but at least it heals you a bit. Heal, the Cure one. The Cause one is pretty pointless. Neutralize Poison is good. This is what replaces Delay Poison, or whatever they called it. Slow Poison. The problem is, if you are poisoned, you are basically dead, and then Neutralize Poison will save your life, but you come back with 1 HP. So you lose your entire, like, you could be at 100 HP, you take a poisoned, you're dead, you get Neutralized Poison, you're at 1 HP. It sucks, but that's all you can do. Try to not get poisoned. This is the same as Protection from Evil, except you can have it affect the whole party. This is the kind of thing I want Shinga doing all the time. It's really nice. You can make some distracting snakes out of sticks. It's mostly useless, other than a couple story points. I guess if you cast it on an enemy, they can't move or cast magic. Sure. At 4th level Cleric spell, it's not very good for that. The other charges tend to be better. And then we're on to 5th level. Look at this. We're making good progress. Now we're into average healing. We're going to see a much better healing spell soon. But before, like in the earlier games, this was as good as it got, so it's nice. Dispel Evil is really strong against summoned evil creatures. It's very specific. So this only works on, and I never remember the full list, but only works on very specific monsters. If they've been summoned from like non-Earth plane, like, you know how Forgotten Realms works, the lore is complicated. But if you're from, say, the astral plane, and you've been summoned to whatever the name of our material plane is, or whatever it's called, the world we live in, and you're evil, this spell gives the target a huge armor class bonus, which is great. And if you damage the creature, they have to pass a saving throw to not get, like, insta-killed, basically. So it's really, really good in very specific situations. Flame Strike is one of the few offensive cleric spells, straight up 6 to 48 damage. Unless it makes it saving throw, but it has a long range and it does pretty good damage. Raise Dead is always nice. I've sort of decided that I will use the editor to remove this penalty, because you can get into sort of an unwinnable situation if your characters keep dying. They keep losing Constitution permanently, so you end up reloading rather than using Raise Dead. So you just redo the battle to not die. So what I end up doing is often just using Raise Dead and then adding Constitution back. We might be able to keep the -1 max hit point, because that's not too penalizing, but losing your Constitution is kind of crazy. And then Slay Living is the opposite, and it rarely works. I guess the idea is, yeah, if they get their saving throw, it does a little bit of damage. That's not that much. The same as Cause Serious Wounds. Not a great spell in my book. Okay, level 6 cleric spells. We're getting to the good stuff. Blade Barrier is a 3x3 area of effect. I never know if this applies damage right when you cast it or only when an enemy enters the area. We'll have to test it out. It does a lot of damage, theoretically, and I like it. It's great for blocking doorways, so that's cool. The trouble is, not the harm spell, the heal spell. Remember how we've got small healing bonuses at these levels? Like, that's not very much. The heal spell is like a full cure, basically, all the way to max HP. It also happens to dispel a bunch of negative effects, But primarily, it'll take a character with 1 HP, like, say you just neutralize poison, to max, which is really great. So 6 level spells, we often want all heal. Once we're higher level clerics, we'll try to fit in a couple blade barriers with the heals. And then the max level cleric spells that we haven't even seen yet, it's hard to say which ones we're going to want. Restoration is very situational. You could probably just not know it generally, and then if someone has their levels drained by energy drain, you could just learn it, cast it once, and then memorize something else. Energy drain, I don't see why we would ever use. Resurrection is like Raise Dead, but full HP. That's pretty good. I'd like a couple of those. And then Destruction, kind of like Disintegrate. I think it's worth a shot. It says, die instantly without a saving throw. So, a lot of characters, a lot of enemies have no magic resistance, and even with high saving throw odds, they'll just die. We'll have to test it out. So that's all the cleric spells, so hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'll be prioritizing. And, you know, some of them are very simple choices. A lot of the times you want your clerics focusing on healing, buffing with prayer, and curing as much damage as they can stack up. With a little bit of damage thrown in here and there. So there's not very many druid spells. A lot of these are copies of cleric spells. So we've seen Detect Magic. Entangle is... I'm not sure how good it is in this game. I've never seen it work perfectly for me. But if you can get the area of effect to apply and actually stop a bunch of enemies in their track, you could hold them still and fireball them to death pretty effectively. But I find that the saving throw must be easy because they seem to break free really common in the gold box games. I've never really seen Fairy Fire work properly. Theoretically, you cast it on an enemy that's hard to hit, and this gives everyone a 10% bonus to hit that character. Doesn't seem that good. We really don't care about rangers, really. There's no druids. And their invisibility to animals. That seems worthless. It doesn't work on magical creatures, which is all we're going to be fighting in this game. Bark Skin is a handy little +1 AC. Like, it's a nice little bonus. It's not much, but it's better than nothing for your ranger. Charming is... I mean, at least it works on all mammals. It has a reasonable chance that you'll fight some enemies. I don't know if those Ettins would have counted as a person or mammal. Probably. So it might have worked and you could charm them. That'd be cool. And then, you know, Cleric 1. So, at level 2, they learn a Cleric level 1 spell. It's kind of weird, right? Cure Disease is fine. Hold Animal is the same as Hold Person, except we don't fight very many animals. I'm hoping those Shock Spiders count as animals, and we could use it on them. But it doesn't... If they're considered monsters, which a lot of enemies are, it won't work. There's a Hold Monster spell. So I'm not sure how often this will work, but we'll try. And then we've seen this spell before. And then this is a special protection from fire. It's better than Resist Fire. If you remember over here, Resist Fire halved damage from fire and improved your saving throw chance. The Druid spell, or the Ranger spell, just takes the caster's level times 12 and absorbs that much fire damage, which is pretty cool. So I could see like a level 10 Druid absorbing 120 fire damage. That's great. But if you cast it on anyone but the caster, it's just a normal Resist Fire. That's the Druid spells. One more set, and then we'll wrap up this video. So, Mage Spells. Burning Hands is usually not great because you have to be adjacent to the target, and you generally don't want your mages doing that. And if they are that close, and you're a fighter mage, your sword will probably do more damage because it's not very much. Charm Person, we sort of covered, like Charm Mammal. You know, it's cool if it works, but the saving throw is pretty solid, and you don't fight a ton of persons. You fight monsters a lot of times. Detect Magic, same as the Cleric spell. Enlarge is actually really good. It doesn't explain the effect here too well, but it makes the character... Well, the role-playing version is it makes them larger, like one... like a halfling to a man size, and a man size to a half-giant size or something, and then a half-giant to a giant. There's some sort of system. But, as far as the game is concerned, I believe it just improves their strength. So you're not going to be dual-wielding two-handed weapons, which would be awesome, as a giant could do, but you still get a big strength bonus, so this is a pretty solid spell in that sort of terms. Friends I never use, not in this game. Magic Missile is your standard single-target damage. If you want to interrupt a mage, they can't save, and they take damage and they're interrupted, so it's really good. And keep in mind, our mages are at level 13, 14, give or take. I don't think there's a cap. Some games, Magic Missile caps at 5 missiles. I think we're up to maybe 6, 7, or 8 missiles, and 2 to 5 each. You know, it doesn't scale incredibly amazingly, but it does scale. So as your level goes up, it keeps doing more damage, and it doesn't miss, which is pretty good. There's ways to counter it, as we'll see, but, you know, it's a good spell. This is a standard, solid level 1 mage pick. Protection from evil, same thing, except there's a AoE version that's better. Read magic, same as identifying a scroll. Fine, no big deal. Shield negates magic missile, which is good. At high levels, I'm pretty sure this does increase our AC. It's hard to... We'll have to test out if I can see the actual effect, but this might only apply if you don't have a shield equipped. Which, as a Cleric Mage, I have a shield equipped. And everyone else is a Fighter Mage. I think sometimes this reduces all range damage, like arrows and rocks, by half. But it doesn't say that here, so I guess probably not. And then Shocking Grasp is basically the improved Burning Grasp. Like, it's the same level spell, but this is better. The only difference is the saving throw. I think Shocking Grasp can save for half damage or something. And some enemies theoretically are weak to fire. Sleep was really good in the first game. It's basically useless by now. Alright, Detect Invisibility, nice to have one of, just in case you fight something invisible. Doesn't happen too often, but it's nice. Turning characters invisible, I'm less impressed with, because as soon as you attack or cast a spell, it's dispelled. So, other than just a momentary save someone's life, it's not going to be terribly useful. Knock, you only need if you don't bring a thief, because generally the thief can handle it. Mirror Image is always a good, I think you can only cast it on yourself. So this is a good Fighter Mage spell to cast on themselves before they go into combat in melee. And it gives you a good chance of wasting a few enemy attacks that, you know, 1 in 4 chance of not even hitting you, and then 1 in 3, 1 in 2 kind of thing. Ray of Enfeeblement is kind of worthless in my opinion. Lowers the enemy's strength, but it's not that big of a difference. Stinking Cloud is a standard favorite. It's only a 2x2 area of effect. But if you fail your save, you're paralyzed and you can be killed instantly. Even if you don't make your save, you're nauseous, which means you can't cast magic and you're easier to hit. That's pretty good. So no matter what, it does something. Strength is good, but not generally as good as Enlarge, in my opinion. Also, there's better second level spells. So, that's that. Level 3, wow. There's always Fireball. So, the Blink spell is fiddly. It's difficult in the Gold Box games to know when a round begins or ends. But every round, your character will have a different sort of turn in the order of turns. Until your turn in the round, you've blinked out and you can't be attacked. No, before. After you've attacked. So, if your mage goes first this round, he'll cast Fireball, and then if he's under the effect of Blink, he's basically immune to attack for the rest of the round, which is great. But it's very random, and it's very difficult to tell where you are in the turn order. That's all. So, it's interesting. Dispel Magic, same as Cleric. Fireball is your standard amazing nuker clearer. It works better indoors, larger area of effect indoors, smaller outdoors. And it scales as well as any spell in the game. So 1 to 6 damage per level of the caster. At level 15, we're talking 15 times 1 to 6. That's great. Potentially 90 damage. It's pretty good. Alright, Haste is also amazing. Level 3 magic user has some of the best spells. The movement bonus is nice, but it's doubling the number of attacks. So most melee fighters at high levels will have 2 attacks per round. This will change that to 4. that's an incredibly huge bonus, and you can have it affect the whole party. So it's great. It does add a year of magical aging, and it doesn't last very long. So cast it right before battle, but it's pretty super powered. Old person we talked about. If it works, they're paralyzed. You can kill them immediately. A better invisibility spell, but I still don't really care much. Lightning Bolt is the same as Fireball, essentially, except large area of effect versus line area of effect. It's a line of between 4 squares and 8 squares. I don't think it's always 8. I think it's between 4 and 8. So if there's an enemy by a wall, you can shoot it at the enemy, bounce off the wall, and you can hit them twice. So it could be better than Fireball. But against a large group of enemies, Fireball is usually better. Here's your Protection from Evil's Radius spell. Same as, I think there's a Cleric version as well, so they're both really good. If you're fighting good enemies, same difference, no big deal. Immunity to non-magical missiles. This doesn't come up very often. I expect most enemies with missile weapons will have +1 or +2 or more missiles. Slow is pretty good. Level 3 Mage have so many good spells, it's really hard to pick. I almost always go fire, 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 and then a little bit of haste, a little bit of lightning. But these spells are also good, Protection from Evil and Slow. So, halves the target's movement and melee attacks. So if you're fighting an enemy, sometimes enemies have more than 2 base attacks. Maybe a really powerful enemy gets like 4 or 5 attacks per round, like one of those 10-headed hydras, right? This cuts it in half. That's a huge bonus. Remember those Otus, the garbage monsters? They had like, I don't know, 6 attacks per round or something? This would really, really help if you could get it to work. I think there's a saving throw, so it doesn't always work, whereas haste on your characters will always work. Alright, we're almost there. Whew, 1 more page. Well, 2 more pages. Charm Monster, we've talked about that. If they're a high HP, it only works on 1, which means it's not very good, in my opinion. It's okay, but, it's kind of a weaker monster-type spell. Confusion, I don't know. I never use these spells. Status effects that they usually resist, I just don't care. Dimension Door is kind of your teleport. It's nice for fighter mages to teleport, because remember I said in combat, if you move out of an enemy's adjacency, or if you move while you're adjacent, they get a free attack on you. It's also considered a back attack, so they have a bonus to hit, I believe. Dimension Door lets you teleport somewhere else, which is pretty cool. Anywhere in your line of sight, basically, and pretty long range. It's nice. Fear, another status effect, not a big deal. Fire Shield is really neat. I know I used it in some of the previous games to great effect. Basically, you cast it on... I guess you can only you can only cast it on yourself. So it works best on like a fighter mage or something. And then the fighter mage will take normal damage if he takes damage, but return double that. So if an enemy hits you for 20, this spell automatically does 40 damage as a counterattack. And they can't avoid it or anything. It's great. Furthermore, you can attune it to heat or cold and take half damage from heat or cold, as long as you attune it correctly. And you take double damage against the opposite elements. So it's a little bit tricky to do properly, but it has great effect in the right situation. Fumble, I don't know. It's another one of these spells, status effects I don't really use much. I guess if it works, they can't attack. I don't think they're considered paralyzed, but they sort of lose their action. And if they save, they just only move half speed. I don't know, it seems kind of weak. Ice Storm is okay. It's not as good as Fireball. The main difference... Well, it says it even inflicts full damage on Resist Cold. So what's the point of Resist Cold if it doesn't even stop Ice Storm damage? I don't even know. It makes no sense. Anyway, it's a little bit more guaranteed, but it could roll a 3, and they would do 3 damage. The fireballs scale a lot better, so, that's that. But sometimes you'll fight monsters that are immune to fire, and you'll need to do ice damage. Minor Globe is like a caster against magic protection, and it just protects levels 1, 2, and 3 spells. It's very effective. Yeah, no doubt about that. You generally want to cast it last if you're doing a bunch of defensive spells. I believe, generally speaking, if you cast Minor Globe and then try to cast Blink, for instance, on the caster, it won't work, because they've got a Globe of Invulnerability. Minor. And then remove Curse, same as Cleric, no big deal. Cloud Kill is always a disappointment. I always think it should be better than it is. It's a 3x3 square cloud, but you only generally can cast it like 2 squares away from the caster. It has a very short range. And it generally doesn't kill anything. Basically, anything you want it to kill is too strong to be killed by it, and it doesn't do anything to them. So I don't know what the saving throw or I don't know what is considered powerful. It's probably hit dice of some sort. But yeah, generally this spell seems amazing, but doesn't do anything, so I don't worry about it. Cone of Cold is a real you-know-what to use. It does good scaling damage, basically. Well, not quite as much damage as a fireball, but it's like 1d4 plus 1 rather than 1 to 6. So it's got scaling damage per level, but it's really weird how the game targets with it, because you just click a square and it makes a cone in that direction, but it doesn't show you the cone, so it just hits the enemies towards where you clicked. I've done some practicing, and I always forget how to use it properly. It's really easy to hit allies and not hit enemies you want, but as your level gets higher, the cone goes further and sort of spreads wider, so it does get better over time, but, I mean, it's a tricky spell to use, but it's good, like, definitely worth learning. Feeble Mind. Do we already have Fumble? Feeble Mind? Oh. This is, stops people from casting. It's kind of like Silence, but again, it's a status ailment that they can resist. So if you cast it, and they pass their saving throw, it just doesn't do anything, so whoop-de-whoop. There's other ways to deal with enemy casters, in my opinion. Hold Monster is your standard, works on basically everything, and paralyzes them, so you can insta-kill them. Very, very strong spell. I mean, they'll resist it, but at least if this... Like, the difference here is if this works, and you can target 4 at a time, they're dead. If this works, they're just not casting magic. You know, if this works, they're not attacking for a turn. If this works, they're just dead. So, you know, that's better. If this works, they run away. If this works, they might attack each other or do nothing, or attack you anyway. So, there's a lot of different status effects. The only one I generally like is Hold. But, you know, to each his own. I'm sure some of you guys actually really love Confusion for some reason. You're crazy. Then there's level 6 spells. So, level 5, what's good? Cone, Hold. Those are the 2 that are worth learning. Level 4 was mostly Ice Storm and Fire Shield. Maybe, depending on what you're up against, Globe and Dimension Door. Level 6, we only have a couple charges of level 6 at this point in the game. Death Spell, I don't know. Apparently slays a greater number of weak opponents and only a couple strong. I'm not impressed, but maybe we'll try it one day. They both disintegrate. I mean, they both kill targets. Disintegrate is single target. Death is a small AoE that works based on how strong the enemies are. I don't know. I think in the pen and paper version, Disintegrate was, like, very much feared, because it totally screwed your character over. There was no resurrection. So getting Disintegrated was really bad, because now you're gone forever. Rather than just killed, so you can be raised deaded. But, I don't know how often this will work on an enemy. I mean, there's not a lot of great level 6 spells, so we'll try some out. You could try to turn an enemy to stone. I don't know if it's worth trying. It's nice to have a couple of these, though, because if you are turned to stone, this is the only cure for it. So, really nice to have a couple of these on the spell book. And then Globe of Invulnerability is just the upgraded minor, and it just works up to level 4 now instead. So this will also protect you from all this stuff. That's cool. Level 7, this is the big boy. This is the one you want. This is basically the same as Fireball, except you can set a timer to it so it can go off at different times, which nobody ever uses, really. I'm joking, but in the computer game, the timer is less useful. The main thing is it actually does more damage than Fireball. Fireball does 1 to 6 per level, and often, although I don't believe so in this game, it has like a level cap, like up to level 10, 1 to 6 damage per level. Delayed Blast generally has a higher level cap or no level cap, and it's 1 to 6 plus 1 per level. So at level 15, that's 1 to 6 times 15 plus 15 damage. And that could be a lot. Like, with good luck, that's a huge amount of damage. Anyway, it's a really good spell. Mass Invisibility, who cares about invisibility? Power word stun. The power words are weird. So they work basically for sure if the enemy has less than a certain number of hit points or hit dice. So a super boss that has like a huge amount of HP, this will do nothing. But a weaker enemy with less HP will always be stunned. Thing is, it's not going to be as good as a fireball. Level 8 stuff we haven't even gotten to in game, so we'll just skim this. Mass Charm I'm not a huge fan of, but it might work because it hits a large number of targets. There's not a lot of good stuff here, essentially. Mind Blank just protects you from Charm and Feeble Mind, whoop-de-woo. I mean, I guess if you're having a spellcaster duel, you'd want this, but most of the time, whoop-de-woo. The Irresistible Dance is just a debuff. If it works, you get a status effect. Basically, if this, like, the real ins and outs of Dungeons and Dragons, some units will have better saving throws against certain types of saves, like dexterity save or strength, whatever they're called. There's like a willpower and I forget them all. Or depends on which game. There's like reaction saves and willpower saves, whatever. So sometimes you could cast this spell, which you know targets a save that they're weak against, and then after that, cast another spell that they no longer can save against, even though they're usually good against it, right? Like, maybe they're strong against Disintegrates or something, so you'd autos Irresistible Dance them and then Disintegrate them. But stuff like that's beyond me in this game, because it doesn't really explain... There's nothing in-game that shows you what the dragon's saving throws are. So you may as well just try Disintegrate if you want. Or really, just fireball them. So yeah, that's kind of the trouble. And then Power Word Blind is essentially the same as Stun, except worse, and just makes them blind. Like, being stunned is better than being blinded. So use that if you want, I guess. This seems worthless. Level 8 magic, not that great. Level 9 magic, so Meteor Storm is... I'm not sure if I'm going to be amazed by it or not. It should be 4 times 10 to 40. So that's 40 to 160 damage. Seems good. Keep in mind, you're probably a level 18 mage at this point. Delayed Blast Fireball is 18 to... 18 times 6 plus 18. That's a lot of damage, so I don't know which one's better, but, you know, it's cool. There might not be any saving throw. Actually, I'm pretty sure you can saving throw to take half damage on Meteor Storm. Same as a fireball, basically. Also, interesting, monster summoning summons 2 really high-level monsters. It'd be nice to see how strong this is. And Power Word Kill, which is the same as the other power words, works based on hit dice. It even tells you 120 hit points. Nice. If you're 121, it does nothing. But, I wonder if it's their current HP, because you could lower a boss to 119 and maybe just kill them. That'd be cool. We'll have to try some of that out. Anyway, this episode went way longer. We were off the rails. Anyway, I figured we'd go through the spells once. Maybe I'll split that into a bonus episode or something. I don't know. It wasn't supposed to take 40 minutes. What a classic BlueAnkylo mess up. Anyway, I am going to, before the next episode, I'm going to painstakingly choose everyone's spells to memorize. Now that I've gone over sort of what the spells do, I will handle who gets how many charges, right? Because some people can learn a lot of spells. I can learn 9 Cleric level 1 spells. Oh boy, I better pick those carefully, you know? So there's stuff like that we're going to have to work around, and that's why I'm going to do that off camera. Okay, so next episode, we'll get to the meat of the game. We will go to the town hall, and then find what our first quest is. So, sorry for the roundabouts. You know, this episode didn't quite go the way I wanted, but anyway, we'll figure that out next time. Thanks for watching, folks. Thanks for bearing with me and learning a thing or two about Goldbox Companion and Pools of Darkness. We'll see you for... Maybe I should just call this, like, not episode 1 and just start next one with episode 1. Yeah, this is probably not actually episode 1. I lied at the beginning because things went weird and we had some technical difficulties. This was just bonus episode. Just Blue and you chit-chatting, talking, learning. You know, this is a good opportunity while I'm rambling any of the characters on the team, this is a good chance for you to expand upon your stories now that you know a little bit about what's going on and that we're hanging out in Phlan. Let's just take the weekend to hang out in Phlan at the inn and party it up and not worry about questing until tomorrow. Alright, folks. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. I'll clear up the technical difficulties on my end before the next episode, and hopefully things will go a bit smoother. See you guys.